You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the director of the John Smith Centre at the University of Glasgow, Kezia Dugdale, and the PR consultant, Deane. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The front of The Guardian has the latest on the ULEZ debate. Its headline, "Don't abandon clean air policies, warn scientists." Time to get off the fence over ULEZ, Keir told, reads the front of the Daily Mail as they too lead on this story. The Daily Telegraph looks at second homeowners, saying they face paying twice the amount of council tax under new laws. Poll boost for Starmer as Sunak backtracks on net zero, reads the front of the Eye, as the Labour Party's lead over the Conservatives jumps 3 points. We'll act on every crime, reads the front of the Times, as Chief Constables pledge more resources to tackle petty crimes. The front of the Express has the headline, "Army under fire over delays in housing migrants." The Financial Times looks at a boost in airline profits with the headline, "Travel boom as holidays come first." Bulger mum fury at sick TikTok vid, reads the front of the Mirror as it looks into a fake AI clip of James Bulger. And the front of the Daily Star looks at the threats of climate change. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code, you are joined tonight by the director of the John Smith Centre at the University of Glasgow, Kezia Dugdale, and PR consultant Deane. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Telegraph and this council tax to double for second homeowners. They face paying twice the amount. It's set to be hit nearly half of the properties. Law's set to hit nearly half of properties. Take us into this.
Well, of course, Michael Gove has been an innovative Secretary of State, willing to do things that often surprise. This, I think, will surprise a lot of people. Second homeowners might, you think, be more likely to be Conservative inclined, and there'll be some saying this is a policy that doesn't support the Conservative Party's well-to-do base. But of course, on the other hand, Gove has been interested for a long time in the sense of where community value in its broadest sense sits. And he's openly talked about the harm that it does to communities to have properties sitting empty. Indeed, properties where many young people trying to get on the housing ladder would love to live and can't afford to buy in their own community. So it may seem quite counterintuitive for the Conservative Party to be producing a policy like this one. But I think actually it will get a lot of people interested. And of course, there are plenty of people who are happy in their own homes and have got their own level of comfort where they want it, but they want their children or grandchildren to be able to get on the housing ladder. And I think if you think about it from that perspective, this may not just be a good thing to do for communities, it may also be electorally rewarding.
And it seems that councils are buying into it as well. The Telegraph saying that they can reveal that 1 in 4 councils in England are agreeing to double the levy, raking in an estimated £200 million, Kezia.
Yes, potentially really significant additional funds for local authorities across England where this policy could apply in the future. Of course, local government is devolved in different parts of the United Kingdom, and in Scotland there's been a similar policy like this for some time now. Previously, second homes only ever had to pay 50% of their council tax in recognition of the fact that they might not have been there all of the time, therefore not using local services all of the time. This policy recognises that second homes, as Alex has very well described, drive down the ability for people to buy homes in the areas that they want to live. So it could rebalance the property market, and it could also raise additional cash that's much needed in local authority areas.
Yes, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Community spokesman says we want to tackle the adverse impact that second homes can have in holiday hotspots, and this measure will give local leaders who know their community best additional flexibility to be able to fund local services. So certainly an attractive prospect for local councils. Let's move on to the Mail and the ULEZ story. Their headline in bold, "Time to get off the fence over ULEZ," Keir told. He has been a little backward in coming forward on what he thinks on this, Alex, I think we can say.
Well, I don't blame him because, of course, the Labour Party really felt confident about winning Boris Johnson's old seat in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. I was on the ground campaigning there myself. I can tell you, I have never before seen a single local issue so dominant in an election or by-election. And I include in that the Chesham and Amersham by-election, which the Conservative Party lost, where HS2 played a big part. ULEZ was the dominant factor in that by-election. And if you think about the cluster of seats around outer London, no wonder the Labour Party has suddenly put the brakes on their ambitions in this area, notwithstanding the legal judgment today, which went in Sadiq Khan's favour, saying that he can go ahead with it when he was challenged by 5 of the councils concerned who were trying to stop it. I think that Starmer is likely to go slow on this. And if you listen to what Tony Blair has been saying this week, that we mustn't pile the burden of delivering on net zero onto the public at large, and that, of course, Britain's contribution to emissions is dwarfed by anything that China does. Those are things in the past that people on the right used to say. And when you hear Blair as an outrider for Starmer saying these things, for me, it's an indication Labour is going to go cool on some of these pledges.
Kezia, do you agree with that analysis? I mean, Sir Keir Starmer so far has refused to say whether the zone should be expanded, saying it's not a simple political decision.
I think the story would be very different if we weren't running into a general election period. And it's very clear to me that all the political parties now are doing a tremendous amount of internal polling and focus groups, and they know that policies like this are deeply unpopular with their base. And the description in the past has been that Keir Starmer is trying to get the barnacles off the boat. He's trying to get the difficult policy issues addressed now, so he's got a clearer run in the general election. And he's concluding that issues to do with climate change policies are not going down well with the public. It's a really difficult one, I think, for all political parties, though, because what we really need them to do is to demonstrate some serious leadership on achieving net zero. In order to get to net zero, there are really hard, difficult retail politic things to address, like stopping people driving petrol cars, changing gas boilers in their homes, consuming less meat. All of these are lead balloons in a general election campaign, and that's why political parties across the board, actually, because the Conservatives are moving on other issues to do with housing standards and potentially delaying changes to things like gas boilers in houses. Political parties across the board are adapting their policies in light of a very fast approaching general election.
But what are your thoughts on the optics that he's seemingly at odds, Sir Keir Starmer that is, with the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, the Labour Mayor?
So this is a clever challenge from the Prime Minister to Keir Starmer on the front of the Daily Mail here, saying, come on, you need to tell your Labour Mayor what you want to happen here. And of course, I think it's unlikely, at least in public, that Sir Keir Starmer will do that, because Labour believes in devolution. It believes in devolving powers like this to the London Assembly, to mayors, to the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, whatever the issue would be, to make decisions in local areas best suited to local circumstances. Sadiq Khan will believe he has a mandate to do this. In fact, it's a mandate he inherited from one Boris Johnson, who introduced ULEZ first as the Conservative Mayor of London. So I think all the machinations will happen behind the scenes here. There will be a shift in policy. It's not clear to me yet just exactly what that will be. I doubt it will be an abandonment of the policy. It might just be a slowing down.
OK, but we read in the Eye that there has been a boost for Sir Keir Starmer, I think 3-point boost in terms of the lead over the Conservatives. Alex.
Yeah, it's an interesting bit of phrasing, isn't it? Because, of course, if you want to get the results that you're interested in, you just look at another poll. And this week we saw a poll for Keir Starmer's personal ratings, which has gone down. The poll that the Eye is talking about is about the Labour Party's lead over the Conservative Party, which has been sustained and undeniable in polls for some time. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But Starmer's personal rating has gone down significantly. His net satisfaction level is now, he is at net zero. He's at zero in recent polling for his own standing. So I think it's interesting the Eye puts this spin on it. I agree with Kez's analysis about the ULEZ challenge that Starmer is facing, but it's very difficult for him because, of course, Starmer is the party leader and Sadiq Khan is the most powerful office holder that the Labour Party has in the country right now, the most powerful person actually doing things as an executive. That's very tricky. And I think that she's right. The Prime Minister has done a smart bit of gut politicking in sticking it to him on the division between him and Sadiq Khan. Because, of course, the real fear for Labour will be, what if Keir Starmer tells Sadiq Khan what to do and Khan calls Starmer's bluff and doesn't do it?
The actual figures according to the Eye. Starmer's party on 44% support compared with 27% for the Tories. I mean, despite the personal polling that Alex is referring to, Kezia, that's quite significant, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's really significant. And the other thing that's important to recognise about an issue like ULEZ and what happened in the Uxbridge by-election is, of course, by-elections are terrible examples of what's likely to happen in a general election contest. There's lots of evidence to demonstrate the fact that people feel like they can vote differently in a by-election with very little consequence than they might do in a general election. So there could be a lot of people in Uxbridge really angry about this particular policy that lent their vote to the Conservatives in order to register an objection to this particular policy and an objection to the mayor, who could well fall back in favour of voting Labour in a general election when there's much bigger UK countrywide issues at stake. So I would urge probably political parties not to draw too many conclusions from a by-election, certainly in terms of realigning their general election strategies off the back of one particular result in the west of London.
And while the political parties may be cooling on their green credentials, the Guardian has the headline that scientists are warning them not to abandon clean air policies. Alex.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed Kez's points about how misleading by-elections can be, with which I completely agree, because, of course, normally it's people like me saying that when the governments have lost by-elections, that you shouldn't listen too closely to by-election results. So I completely agree with everything Kez said about how much by-elections can't tell you about the broader national picture. On the point about climate policy more broadly, until recently, one of the things people said about British politics that differentiated us from countries with which we are otherwise close cousins, like the United States or Australia, for example, was that in this country, climate change hasn't been a partisan party political issue in the way that it is in those countries. And I would have hoped, actually, there's an opportunity for the Sadiq Khans of this world to just pragmatically say, let's go on a bit of a go slow. We're not saying ULEZ expansion isn't going to happen, but realistically, in these financial circumstances, with the cost of living crisis and so forth, we're not going to impose this policy now. We're going to phase it in a few years later than we intended to. And equally, the government could well say, now that the rest of Europe isn't moving off of combustible engines until 2035, we're going to follow suit. We're not going to kneecap our automotive industry and put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage. We're not abandoning our policies. We just want to go that little bit slower. And I think you would find broad cross-party support for that. And I think this is a time for that kind of moderation and pragmatism, on which all parties can agree. Because otherwise, if we have one party really still going hell for leather for targets we really don't think we're realistically going to meet, and think all the burden's going to fall on working people who are really struggling at the moment, and another party saying we are going to go slower, it's better to abandon some of this stuff for now, the party doing the latter, whatever you think of the policy issues, will benefit.
Well, the Conservative Party in London are saying that they would scrap the ULEZ expansion, but this is completely opposite to what the scientists are telling us, and surely that's who we should be listening to, Kezia.
Yes, I mean, this is a Guardian front page leading from comments from the Royal College of Paediatricians and Child Health, giving us a timely reminder as to why policies like ULEZ were introduced in the first place, and that is to improve air quality. I think too recently we've got into the habit of just viewing climate change as a sort of puritanical moral crusade, when actually many of the policies that we're talking about are about improving health, particularly the health of people in poorer areas, and also providing long-term economic stability. We know that the cost of fossil fuels is going to rocket until they run out. We need to find alternative forms of energy. And if we make these investments now, we'll save an awful lot of money in the future. If only our political leaders could try and find language around climate change, which was about exactly what we're talking here: child health, tackling poverty and inequality, building a more sustainable future, they might find a bit more favour for their climate change policies.